The minute I tell people that I'm going to do a certain thing with my knitting, specifically, I just don't do it. Hi everyone, and welcome to the first podcast episode in 2024. For those joining this video fresh, my name is Lauren. I'm coming to you from England in the United Kingdom, and this is a space where I chat all about my knitty projects. There are some other crafts thrown in. For returning viewers, you will notice that I am in a completely different location. Something very exciting has happened, and that is that I have moved the majority of our stuff back to our property in the southwest of the United Kingdom. As a very quick recap, we had renovated our home here, put it on the market because both of us, our jobs had moved further towards, well, I'd always been in London, my other half's job moved closer to London, and so we were temporarily living with family whilst we tried to sell a house, buy a new house, blah 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 blah. And the long and the short is, our plans have changed drastically. I quit my corporate job back at the end of last year, and so I'm going to be moving back down to the southwest, and I'm so excited to do so. It's not how we thought things would go, but I actually think things have turned out for the best. So I have moved a whole load of stuff back down here. I'll be moving down officially next week, but it feels really good to be making plans for how I'm going to make the room that I'm currently sat in into my knitting room yarn studio. So what you're seeing behind me is very temporary, but stay tuned. I will let you know as and when, but I will be putting up a video talking about making my craft room, basically. So anyway, that's enough chit chat. Before I dive into some knitting projects, what I'm wearing. So this is actually a charity shop sweater. It's not hand knit. I've got this and a pair of jeans on, old pair of jeans, because we are doing some bits in the garden and going to be kind of lifting bits around. It's going to be a bit of a doing day, so in some kind of, you know, less precious items, although I do love this jumper. But the hand knit that I am wearing is my market day shawl. This is a pattern I released at the beginning of last year. I will link it down below. Thank you so much for those who have purchased a copy of this recently after my Everything I Knit in 2023 video. This is a worsted weight wrap shawl scarf, knit out of Dreamers Manchalopi Gilead in the colourway Foray. It's a really quick knit. I've really focused on making the process really enjoyable. You knit it point to point rather than the full width, so you've never got huge stitch counts on your needles, apart from the border, which is nice and short. And yeah, I throw this on all the time. It's the perfect thing to throw on and off, and it does tend to stay, so hopefully I'll prove that by not fiddling with it too much today. Oh, I've got a hair stuck. Ugh. Right, with that lovely rambly introduction, I will kick into knitting stuff proper. So I actually don't have any finished objects to share today. I shared lots of them in my podcast episode that I released on Christmas Eve, so if you want to see some of the gift knits that I finished, please do check out that episode. I'll link it up above. But obviously since Christmas, having cleared the needles loads, I haven't had very I'll show you. I've made lots of progress on things, but I haven't yet completed anything. So let's dive in. So I'm going to show you a number of whips, including a test knit, and then I've got a couple of very short brief section on yarn acquisitions, and then I was going to use the main part of this episode to talk about knitting plans. I say that with such a pause. I'll explain more later. So, knitty projects. For those who haven't seen, we are running a Invest in Yourself make along over on Instagram using that hashtag, Invest in Yourself MCAL. I will put the hashtag down below in the description box. This kicked off on the 26th of December and is running until the last day of January, when I will pick a or some winners depending how many people enter. And my first cast on for this make along is a very modified version of the Kostner scarf by Erin Jensen. I've knit one of these for gift knit for Christmas, and it was much wider. It still wasn't the full width of the original pattern. It really is quite a wide scarf, and it took me a long time to knit that one, I'm going to be honest, and so I've made some quite heavy modifications to this version. Now it's showing up pretty true to colour actually on camera. It's a very bright orange. It's a fluffy alpaca and polyamide main colour yarn from Adriafil, and I will put the colourway details etc. down below. I have modified this pattern by as I say, reducing the width, and then I'm not following the exact instructions for when you do the stripes. I'm just kind of popping them in when I feel like it. I think I've done something like 25 rows before doing that set, and I'll do another 25 rows. I'm also not following instructions for how many stripes you do at each interval, and I'm doing this one in stockinette stitch rather than in garter stitch, which the original pattern calls for. So I really hope Erin doesn't mind me modifying things so much, but I wanted to kind of still give credit because it's her pattern that has fundamentally inspired this and formed the basis. So yeah, so I've mentioned the main colour. The stripes are in Rowan Classic, which is kind of a blown alpaca chain construction. It's a slightly different gauge to the orange Adriafil yarn, so yeah, we're changing gauge slightly, but I think because of the kind of fluff factor of both yarns, doesn't matter too much. And this one is just going to be for me, so really doesn't matter. I'm knitting this on 5mm needles, although it's currently on a barber cord, and you'll see why in a moment. But yeah, really enjoying knitting this. So that is some progress since I cast on the 26th of December, but there has been lots of other knitting going on, so let me show you. The other project that I have put more progress into, this one is going to remain, yeah, I think it is going to remain inside out. Returning viewers will know I knit all my things inside out, very long story. But you might recognise even from the inside, this is the Nord sweater by Sandnes Garn. This is a free pattern online in English and in multiple other languages. I used the instructions for the yoke, which as I say is currently inside out but looks something like this, using multiple different scraps of yarn, including some kind of Surrey alpacas. And then you do a round yoke construction, then you do a raglan construction. From that point, I kind of just made it up myself. I haven't really followed their instructions. And the last time I showed you this, I had knit all of this sleeve, but it needs then a cuff added onto the end. And I'd knit all the body and one panel. I'm doing a split hem, and I'd knit one panel, all in twisted rib on 3mm needles. And I'm a tight knitter, so that's really quite tight. And I'd said to you that all I had left was to do the neckline, yoke, collar, ribbing, the cuff, and the other panel. Well, and words today, both cuffs. Well, actually, I'd got quite a lot of straight knitting left to do on the second sleeve. So I have cracked on with that, and I only have like 25 rounds left to do before I add on the cuff. So we really are getting to a point where it's just ribbing. It doesn't look like much progress. I've probably knit from about, in fact I have knit from there, by my fingers here. So a decent bit of progress on that, given the progress I've also made on some other projects. I think it's unlikely I'm going to get this done ahead of a trip that I'm taking at the weekend, but we will see. Or maybe I can take this with me and have the aim of at least wearing it once on the trip. Let's just see. But I really do love the sweater. I will go into proper details with all like the yarns and the yoke and stuff, but when I finish it next episode. But the main yarn is a Filcolana Pernilla in light grey, and this is a desert island yarn for me. I just absolutely love it, and I'm knitting it on 3.5mm needles. Okay, so now we're getting to some what I think is more exciting things. So this next project is what has really taken up a lot of my time since Christmas, or kind of during Christmas and since. This is a test knit for Contour Knit, which is Sharon, a beautiful Dublin-based designer who is designing and releasing this jumper, which is the Achill Jumper or Achill Sweater. And I have done both sleeves, I've done the collar, and I've knit to just below the sleeve separation, and so now all I've got to do is the body and this gorgeous split hem. This has taken up a lot of time. It's actually a super speedy knit, like it really is. I'm knitting this up on 4.5mm needles, which is the recommended size. I'll come on to the yarn in a minute. The ribbing absolutely flies. I normally hate ribbing, it absolutely flies. The construction along the shoulders is really beautiful, you can see here. So it's kind of a semi-drop shoulder construction, not fully, kind of half a set in, half a dropped. I think it will end up quite far down my arm. And the reason this has taken up a lot of time is on the first sleeve, I was knitting and knitting and knitting and knitting and knitting, and I thought this sleeve looks absolutely enormous. But I kind of was just like, I need to trust the process, I need to kind of follow the pattern and just, you know, see where it takes me. And anyway, I got down to kind of about here on the sleeve, and I started doing calculations based on the kind of decreases that the pattern prescribes, and I just realised none of my stitch counts were going to add up, and that's when I realised I had picked up double the amount of stitches that I should have done. And that teaches me to pick up stitches for a sleeve when I'm in like full Christmas mode. I had Christmas brain. But that meant I had done an enormous amount of knitting. I'd knit kind of almost like 2 sleeves in one go. So no wonder that felt like it was taking me forever. So I ripped that all back, re-picked up the sleeves, knit the whole sleeve, and then realised I'd misread the instructions for some really interesting decrease shaping that the pattern introduces partway down the sleeve. And I'd completely misread that, and I was chatting on the test knitting group, and it's a really supportive, lovely bunch on there, and completely my error. So I then had to rip back again and then re-knit and finish off that sleeve. So this first sleeve is kind of like 2 to 2.5 sleeves, if that makes any sense, worth of knitting, and then I have done the other sleeve completely. So what feels like very big progress on that. Could have been a lot quicker. It's going to look beautiful after blocking. The ribbing is pulling in gorgeously right now, which means it will really hold its shape and look really gorgeous when it's blocked. So some really good elasticity there, and I literally just need to knit down the body. So this is one I really am hoping to have finished by the end of this week, which is really exciting. And hopefully I can take this on my trip. And hopefully give, I mean, I've got very minimal feedback, it's a beautifully written pattern, but give some words of feedback to Sharon's ready for her pattern release. So I'm loving this. I was keeping the yarn I was knitting this in a little bit secret and seeing if anyone wanted to guess what yarn I've been knitting it in, but I haven't had any guesses so far, so I thought I'd just share with you because I am really enjoying it, and it is a yarn I have used before. So back in the autumn, you may remember that I knitted a baby flax light sweater from Tin Can Knits, and I included some cables down the side. So actually, I mean, different shoulder construction, but similar with the cables down the side as this. And I knit it in this yarn, and I just thought, that is so gorgeous, I need to knit me a jumper in this. So this is CubiCol Big Value DK, and it's in the colourway Taupe 4023. And what I love about this yarn is it is a 100% premium acrylic yarn, so you get 145 metres or 158 yards per 50 grams. But you can wash it on a 40-degree wash, and for an acrylic yarn, it looks like wool. It feels like wool. You don't get that squeakiness that you can sometimes get, and the heathered in it and the way they've dyed the yarn makes, as I say, makes it look like wool, makes it look very natural. So I'm really enjoying knitting with this, and I think when I'm looking at my kind of handmade wardrobe and what's wearing really well, what's not, I think it was important for me to test out how acrylic yarns work in my wardrobe for me, and whether that kind of changes how I wash things, and just nice to experiment with some different yarns. So really enjoying this. There will be a picture going up on Instagram of this progress so far later today, and hopefully, if you're not able to see on camera all the details, I don't know how well this is focusing today because the light's a little bit funny. I'm having to kind of just go with the flow a bit on that front, but I don't know how well you're able to see all the details, so hopefully on the Instagram pictures you can see a little bit more. So I'll plough on with that. That's taken up lots of time but been very, very enjoyable, and it's only taken a while because of my errors. And this appears to be a sweater week, because a sweater episode, because I have also, as part of my Invest in Yourself make along, cast on a second Gallant Sweater by Caidree mohair edition. Now, I promised myself I'd put this on barber cords before the episode so that you could see this properly, and classic me, I haven't. But this actually proves, it does kind of serve to demonstrate quite a good point, which I did want to raise, which is this this sweater pattern. I just think it's such a fantastic layering piece. I've already knit one. I knit it up in Wee County Yarns, Kinross 4-ply in the colourway Quartz, and that's a yarn that really blooms and is super soft and drapey, and I have worn that sweater time and time and time again. I love it. I bring it out all the time. And it's such a throw-on piece that looks good with anything and keeps me just the right temperature. So I knew I wanted to knit another one. And these are just so lightweight, and I think I think it's probably going to be similar to a Tin Can Knits Love Note, or is it the Lento sweater that everyone's been knitting? And there's another one that's like a really loose gauge. But basically, like, I'm knitting this on like a hat needle size, well, even smaller really, to be honest, a super small needle, and I am most of the way through the raglan increases, and it still all fits, and it's very comfortable to knit, and it's not dragging on the needle, it doesn't feel heavy. So I just think that's so impressive, and I think there's a potential that I could knit the whole sweater on this needle, and that's kind of amazing in multiple different ways. It makes it a very relaxing project for me. I'm not having to constantly switch different needles in. I don't have to think about kind of where I'm getting to in the pattern, and it makes it very portable. So win-win-win. It's not great for showing you on the podcast, but hey. And this colourway is blowing out quite a lot on camera. But as I said, I'm most of the way down the raglan increases. I think I've maybe, I don't think it's giving anything away in the pattern to say I've got maybe a third left to do, and then there's a kind of yoke part 2 that I need to do. It's got a beautiful funnel neck, so this will stay straight and the raglans come out from here. I'm knitting this on 5mm needles. I think the pattern calls for 4.5, but as I say, I'm quite a tight knitter. And I am knitting this up in, where's my ball of yarn? It's a Highland wool in the colourway Rhubarb, which is, no, it hasn't got a colour number, it's just called Rhubarb. And I've got 4 balls of this, but I will keep you posted on how many I use. They're 50-gram balls, and as I say, considering this is kind of knit on 5mm needles, I've got this much left of my first 50-gram. I would imagine that's somewhere around approximately 30 grams left. And I've already knit, as I say, 2/3 down the yoke. So I think it's very possible that I could make this in 3. And if that's the case, this then becomes an incredibly cost-effective project using pure wool from a really lovely company. So when I finish it, I will calculate what the cost was, and I'd like to do this for more of my projects if it is of interest to people. So I will have notes in the description box that kind of include, when a project is finished, what the kind of total cost was to the best of my ability to calculate it. Obviously, if it's yarn that I bought ages ago and I don't have the tag for, I can't find online, or I've been gifted, I may not always know, but I will do my best. So yes, it's been a couple of weeks of 3 different sweater projects and 1 scarf. I've also been, I know it doesn't really count as a work in progress, but it does take up a lot of time and is knitting related, which is, I've been going through and frogging lots of projects that I probably mentioned in my roundup of 2023 video. Some are a little bit older and I've mentioned in previous episodes, but I've been beginning to frog projects where I loved the yarn but I wasn't 100% happy with the end product, and that was stopping me wearing it or using it in the way I wanted to. And lots of those include mohair, so trying to frog them has been a little bit tricky. I've done all the usual tricks, I've kind of put them in the freezer and things like that, but it is still a quite slow and careful process. And the other thing I've been up to, which I didn't have enough progress on or wasn't kind of in a position to be able to kind of show it properly, but I've been doing a little bit of spinning on my drop spindle. I'm very, very beginner at spinning, really not proficient, learning a lot, would love to spin on a wheel. I have a very old one that is very broken, that needs fixing, but it's so old that getting parts is quite hard. But spinning is something I would like to dabble in more. So I'm kind of, yeah, still enjoying doing a bit of that. I'm spinning up a braid from Laine Family Yarns, which is a gorgeous dye company. in the UK. So yeah, been doing a little bit of that, but it's all kind of wrapped up on my spindle, but I've got loads left to do, so there's loads of the braid wrapped around the spindle. Anyway, it's just not in a good place to show, but I've been doing a little bit of that in front of the fire. So I think that brings me on to a quick bit of yarn acquisitions before I then talk about some knitting plans for 2024. And I'll do the acquisitions first because some of them link into those plans. Taking a good glug of my ginger and honey hot drink. Right, the acquisitions are just over here. And to be honest, they're not really acquisitions because they were Christmas gifts from family, particularly my lovely sister. I'm very fortunate that she's a massive supporter of my knitting, and every year for Christmas she and her other half get me yarn, and I just love it. So some people from previous episodes, and these are long time ago, but some people will have watched the episodes where I started to do a self-drafted raglan sweater in wool Dreamers Manchalopi, which is an unspun yarn. I still want to return to that project. It was put on hold for a number of different reasons. It's going to be quite an adventurous project in multiple ways, and I'm very excited to get it back out and back onto the needles. It's currently on waste yarn on hold. But I love knitting with the yarn. It's got nothing to do with the yarn that I put it on hold. And I really wanted to knit more in the yarn. So the previous colourway I had, I don't know if you can see, is just down here. It's kind of the stony, warm kind of grey colourway. And I now have 2 cakes of the orange colourway. Now, I don't think there is a colourway name for this. There might be on websites where they sell it, but I can't see a colourway name, but it's just... oh, just gorgeous. It's probably coming up a little bit bright on camera. That's probably more true to colour. So this is wool Dreamers Manchalopi, as I mentioned, and it's 100% Manchego wool. If you knit, it's caked up with 2 strands already held together. And if you knit with it like that, you have 230 metres or 251 yards per 100 grams. And they recommend a needle size of 6 to 8 millimetres. But if you unravel it as just a single strand, then it's 460 metres or 503 yards per 100 grams, and they recommend a 3.25 to 4.5 millimetre needle. Now I must confess, I've tried knitting with it single-stranded, and I think again, I'm quite a tight knitter, just did not work for me. I know some people who've held it single but with a mohair, and that's worked well. I want to experiment a bit, but I have 2 cakes of this, so 200 grams. And one thought I had was to potentially make another version of the Gallant Sweater mohair edition, but not in mohair, in this. I think that would be gorgeous and I'd wear it an awful lot. My only thought is whether this would be better suited to a denser gauged item, only because things like when you bend your elbow, will I kind of end up stretching it all out of shape with this kind of yarn? And it might not have the spring back that I want. So the other option is I make something like the Big Hug or the Big Love kind of jacket cardigan by Anchor Strict, which is in my library, so I really should make it. I cast on a version 5 years ago or something, and I just completely got the wrong gauge, and I think then it was summer, and then anyway I haven't ended up knitting it. So I could do something like that, which I think would be great in this, or a kind of denser cardigan. So some yarn, some knitting plans forming around this. The other thing that my sister kindly gifted me was 2 balls of Rosa Pomar Brusca yarn. This is in the colourway A569, and this is, it says 100% wool, 125 metres per 50 grams, and it's made from 2 native breeds of Portuguese sheep. It's made from Saloia and Portuguese Merino. And this is just this beautiful kind of ice bluey colourway. It's got a little bit more green in it than it's coming up on camera, and I've got 2 balls of that. So I think that's going to be really beautiful in like a pair of mitts, or I might do like a headband to cover my ears, because I normally wear my hair up in a bun, and it means that hats are actually quite hard for me to wear because they don't really accommodate the bun. So I might combine this with another yarn in my stash and kind of make maybe a colour work headband. That could be really nice. So lots of options with this. And then the final yarny gift, she was incredibly generous, was 2 skeins of by Laxtons Sheep Soft DK, which is 100% British wool. It's Blueface Leicester and Masham blend. So gorgeous. Smells so sheepy and delicious. It's spun by Laxtons from fleece to finished yarn in less than 50 miles. I have wanted to try Laxtons yarn by Laxtons for a really, really long time. So I'm just really delighted to be able to try this out. And I've got 2 skeins of this. DK weight, they recommend 3.75mm needles, and you get 225 meters per 100 gram hank. And yeah, it's in like a kind of, it's in like a navy colour. They call it Kettlewell DK is the shade. It's kind of like a heathered navy, very, very dark. So I've got 2 skeins of this. This looks incredible with the orange. So there's some options forming there. Actually, to be honest, just generally, like the colour palette works really well, like the 2 blues and the orange. So lots and lots of options, but just, yeah, feeling very lucky for yarny gifts. So that brings me on really nicely to knitty plans for 2024. Now, you might have seen me kind of pausing slightly earlier and smiling, and the reason for that is that I'm terrible at kind of, the minute I tell people, you guys, a friend, whoever, the minute I tell people that I'm going to do a certain thing with my knitting, specifically, I just don't do it. However much I wanted to do it before I told people. I think it's something to do with the fact that for me, my knitting is all about creative process, creative outlet. It's meant to be a relaxed thing. And so when I then share a plan with other people, I feel like I'm then stuck to it, and that doesn't feel as fluid and as creative and as kind of stress-free. I put loads of pressure on myself to then deliver. So I've been getting a little bit better with kind of when I say on the podcast, like, oh, I'm hoping to finish this by the next episode. I'm getting better with that. It doesn't feel like a pressure anymore. But that's why I'm a little bit like hesitant to give like a full detailed list of 2024 plans, because I'm just like, will everyone be disappointed when I then don't deliver on them all? Let's see. But having said that, I think I can keep things general enough that I don't feel constricted by them and still feel creative, but hopefully give all of you a really good sense of what it is that you can expect out of the podcast and where my mind's at with my knitting this year. So I think as a general theme, I spent a lot of this year kind of doodling things and kind of making things up as I went and just experimenting. And I'm so pleased I did, and I learned lots from it. So I think there will still be bits of that this year. I'm going to try and channel more of that into design work. So I'm hoping that more of those will become finished designs that I can publish and share with all of you, because I also really recognise that, you know, there are some of you that will comment on my videos and say, I absolutely love that, you know, will there be a pattern, can I make it? And I realise that must be quite frustrating if you see something you like and then I'm just not giving any instructions on how to do it, particularly when I have already gone through the process. So I have kind of, if I just made better notes, maybe I could share those more. So you'll still see some of that, but as I say, it will kind of become, hopefully get channeled more into design work. But I'd also really like to knit more of other people's designs this year than I did. This year I either reused patterns I'd already bought. I did buy some new, but I'd just like to engage more with other designers and yeah, enjoy their kind of creative process and what they're putting out into the world. And in doing so, I really would like to challenge myself to knit more patterns from around the world. I'd like to knit at least one pattern in a different language and have to translate it. And yeah, I just want to enjoy following a pattern a bit more. So with that in mind, I think I will also be applying for more test knits and kind of supporting designers in the test knit process if they should wish me to. Obviously it's up to them whether or not they choose me as a test knitter. I've really enjoyed the test knit process I've done so far, and I want to really focus those test knits on garment knitting in particular. So that's going to be one plan. So test knitting, mainly garments, little bit of experimental stuff with a view to do designs. And then in terms of some really specific objects I'd like to knit for my hand knit wardrobe this year, I'd really like to make a large jacket slash cardigan style piece of outerwear. And I obviously mentioned potentially knitting like the Big Love or Big Hug by Anchor Strict, but there are some other designs that are kind of like that. It could be that I challenge myself to knit a kusakofta, a kind of traditional Norwegian knitted jacket, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Apologies to my Norwegian friends on here. I could challenge myself to knit one of those, and I could get the pattern in Norwegian, so that would be kind of doubling up as a kind of double nice challenge. So a kind of jackety cardigan piece of outerwear, something thicker, something I could wear out the house as my outer layer. Then I'd also like to challenge myself to knit some things for my home. I've obviously got my scrappy triangle blanket on the go. I would like to make a dent in that. I'm not going to challenge myself to finish it. It's a kind of ongoing, very long project. But maybe some cushion covers, maybe, yeah, I don't know. I want to have a look. I know Pearl Soho's got a number of amazing patterns for things like towels and tea towels and washcloths and mitts to take things out the oven, all sorts. So I'm really excited to have a look on their website and others and see what I can make for my home. So you'll see an item of homeware, at least one item of homeware in this year. And then I'd also like to knit a colourwork cardigan that's not a piece of outerwear, and I really want to do more steeking this year. I've done some steeking before, and I've got a steeked project on the go, that quite adventurous one using the Manchalopi that I started this year. And I think outside of that, on the kind of more accessories front, I would like to knit myself a pair of mittens, maybe some plain ones, not necessarily some colourwork ones, but some kind of quite simple, smart ones. And I'd like to reuse some of this yarn that I'm frogging from various projects. That's going to be another challenge. Generally speaking, I will dive into my stash as much as I can for different projects. I buy my yarn for a reason, but I'm also not going to kind of restrict myself to kind of only knitting from stash, but I will share with you guys what's from stash, what's brand new and has been bought for projects, etc. And I guess on that topic of yarn, my kind of other goal for this year is just to knit with more British yarns, either produced in the UK or like dyed in the UK. I just really want to continue to support the knitting community here. I will continue to support the knitting community globally as well, and I have a number of trips planned and will of course be supporting local knitting shops and all sorts when I do that. But I just want to make sure that I'm not racking up shipping and the impact on the environment, etc. I'm going to try and minimise that as much as possible and support local artists. And then the final knitting plan, and I appreciate I've not been super specific in terms of products, I've kind of given you bits, but as I say, trying to keep it nice and loose. But the other knitting adjacent goal for me this year is just to meet as many fellow knitters as possible and to really immerse myself in this wonderful community. So I'm going to be attending as many yarn festivals as I can. I'm going to try and arrange some knit nights. I'm just really excited to, for the first time probably in my life, be able to just really immerse myself in the thing that I love so much. So those are just some of my goals. I'm sure as the year progresses I will be able to be a bit more specific, and I will kind of do recaps on how all the projects I'm knitting are kind of coming together to fill holes in my hand knit wardrobe. Or maybe they might be complemented by some sewing projects, and maybe there might be some macrame, some crochet, who knows. But I think that's about as specific as I can give you without, as I say, kind of tipping over into restricting my creativity. But yeah, hope that gives you a flavour. I'm going to try and cover as many techniques as possible. I'm not going to be kind of doing it as like a tick box exercise, but I'm just excited to keep challenging myself and to keep learning. And actually that reminds me, I did miss a kind of very specific category. I'd like to knit some more garments that are like smart, like kind of evening wear, like date wear kind of stuff. I've heard people refer to Lily Kate France's patterns as very much like kind of date night vibes. That's the exact kind of vibe of pattern, like a bit more tailored and chic, I guess. I've got lots now of kind of knits that are really pretty, but they're quite casual. They kind of something I'd throw on at the weekend and walk into town or whatever. I do have a set of knits that are very much oriented around like workwear, and that's obviously where my kind of work knit started, was I was wearing my hand knits to work. So I do have some that are work appropriate, but they're kind of work appropriate, keeping in mind that you're going to be sat wearing them all day, as opposed to smart in the sense of like chic and fashionable and date night. You know, you put them on for kind of a special occasion. I haven't really got those, so that's something else you'll see me working on this year. I feel like I'm rambling a bit at this point. I will be hopefully including a lot more details in these videos this year. You'll be seeing some yarn shop tours, as I said, some kind of insider scoop on me creating my craft room, just hopefully sharing more of my little world with all of you. So I'm really excited. Thank you for joining me for this video, and I really look forward to seeing you next week in a video about my trip that I'm taking and some yarn shops included in that, and then there'll be another podcast episode the following week. So during that time, stay safe, enjoy your knitting, ease yourself into 2024. If you're experiencing January blues, just do what's going to pick you up, stay steady, and I will see you very, very soon. Bye.